Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and Nintendo just revealed new footage for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, and part of this footage could be teasing something absolutely insane about this game. This absolutely insane thing seems to be pertaining to Sylux, one of the main antagonistic forces going into this game, and the potential ramifications here could be huge for the overall Metroid Prime 4 experience. I think for those of us who have already been excited about this game that are totally sold, it's just going to further excite us about the game. But for those who are on the fence, who are worried regarding the whole Federation Trooper situation, including Miles McKenzie, this situation might alleviate your concerns a little bit, potentially. So that's what we're getting into today. Are you looking to improve the comfort and grip on your controllers going into these holidays? Then perhaps you should check out the Galaxy Edition no-slip thumb grips from KontrolFreek, who are, yes, sponsoring today's video. Of all the different KontrolFreek grips I have used, I actually think these are pretty high up there. I do find them to be super comfortable, they do improve your grip so they can help you with your gaming experience, and they're pretty easy to put on. You simply flip them over and you place them on your control stick and there you go. And this particular package actually comes with 2 different grips per color here, and you can fit these not on just your Switch 2 Joy-Cons, but the Switch 1 and 2 Pro controllers as well. You can check these out with the link in the description below. So this new footage comes in the form of 2 commercials, 2 30-second commercials that are narrated in Japanese, but you'll still hear some of the English voice acting. And you can see it on Nintendo's Japanese website for the game, but it's also on YouTube as well. But I'm going to be going over these 2 different trailers here, breaking down everything we're seeing, including that extraordinary crazy thing that we'll be getting into. But yes, please do keep in mind that if you're trying to go in blind into Metroid Prime 4, then maybe you want to avoid a lot of Nintendo's marketing going into this. I personally don't think any of this is taking place in the second half of the game, it's just first half stuff, but some of it could be pretty significant, so just keep that in mind here. But now getting into the actual trailer analysis or commercial analysis. So a lot of this we've seen before, not all of it is totally crazy. They're showing off mouse controls with this commercial, but there is some new footage with this one here. There's actually a few interesting things here that I want to talk about. So first, notice with this Ice Griever here, that's what they're being called in the game, Griever, and I do wonder if Griever ties into the word grieving. And we have talked about how these characters have the same amount of limbs and tentacles. They share a very similar anatomy to the Lemorn. They even have a hole where the second gem would be, so I do think they're related, but the scan does call them Grievers, and there are different kinds. These are the Ice Grievers, or I'm not sure that's their official name, but they are white Grievers in cold areas. Anyway, when this Griever does hit you though, look at this. Samus loses just 10 health. Not too big of a deal. However, in this next scene here against this boss fight, notice Samus has 2 energy tanks, 79 health, so 279 health, right? And then, boom, she loses a whole energy tank, goes down to 99, so she loses 80 with that flame beam there. Which I do think you probably could either A, jump over it if you have the double jump, or you just use your Morph Ball. Still though, that is a heavy hit from this monster here. Pretty cool stuff to see that you can lose a lot of life pretty quickly with boss fights like this. Anyways, continuing. Alright, so we're fighting the snow puppies here. Also notice the snow puppies are stronger than the Grievers. You get hit by this guy, and there's a whole bunch of them, right? So you lose 30 health, looks like? Yeah, 30 health. Which is a lot when there's a whole bunch of them. But here's something new. We have not seen this scene before here, and this particular wolf looks larger than the others, at least in this cutscene. Like, look how big his mouth is. Look at his nose. His nose is the size of Samus's head. It's pretty intense. And this is new. I speculate that this is actually the alpha wolf of the pack. We do see there's a wolf calling out to all the others from a prior trailer. We can even see him off into the distance in other frames. So I do think that maybe what happens is you fight these wolves, you beat them, and then this bigger one comes out to take you on. And it's some sort of boss fight of some kind. It would be really cool if Samus contained them and ride them. I don't think that's the case because we have Viola, but it's an interesting thought I think I have here. Something else I think is worth noting is that we've seen that the wolves have these like weird holes on their snout here, and it does remind me a little bit of the holes we see on the grievers as well. The grievers have it on their heads, which is where the Lemoran have it, you know, the psychic gems. But I am kind of curious, like, is there some sort of correlation here between the holes on the grievers' heads and the holes we see on the snouts right under the eyes of the wolves? And you can see it here as well. Hard to say for sure. But anyway, there's 2 ads that were shown, and this other one is kind of a pretty big deal. But before getting to that, let me share with you something else that I noticed from the commercial a day ago that I think is neat. There's a countdown sequence here in the flare pool area where Samus is using the grapple hook. We talked about this footage yesterday while also talking about the title screen, so if you want, you can check out that video there. But yeah, there are going to be escape sequences, which does not come really as any surprise to me, so very interesting there. But yes, if you do find yourself enjoying my videos, I would very much appreciate your support, be that through a subscription, liking, commenting. It all makes a huge difference. Now, moving on. Okay, so this trailer starts, and this is the area where Samus wakes up for the first time on Viros, it appears. Like, there's this big attack that happens, as you see here, and then Samus goes to Tanimar to help them out. Sylux shoots the artifact, there's a big flash, and she wakes up here. That's what we kind of figure. She doesn't have the psychic gem yet, presumably here on Chrono Tower. She meets some sort of Lemoran. It gives her the psychic gem, the psychic abilities, then she goes to Fury Green, and everything else kind of just pans out. Maybe. But here, I think is something very interesting. So this is a new clip we haven't seen before, and notice how this trooper right here has his gun raised towards Samus. What's going on with that? Now, notice as Samus approaches, you can see the light shine on Samus's legs. In other words, the top half right here is obscured in darkness. Now, it's visible to us, but maybe not so visible to him. But also, Samus is wearing the Viola suit, not the normal suit or Varia suit. And so this trooper may be confused as to who this is. Like, if you don't know who Samus is, this look right here, I would say is actually pretty scary looking. So I would definitely be concerned if I was him stuck on an alien planet. But it could be suggestive of something here. Now, moving forward, we see that he lowers his gun, raises his visor, and says,
"All right, I'm in."
So he needed convincing. He was worried at first. And I think that's very important because there is this whole motif that the marketing for Metroid Prime 4 has harped on a few times of survival, of trying to survive. And you do have Samus, who is a hunter, and you also have Sylux, who is a fellow hunter. And so there could be a hunting going on right now. And so the troopers, when they are not with Samus, might be rather concerned about the situation, and they could be on the defensive here like this person is right now as Samus is approaching him. So it's something I think is important to keep in mind here. But now we see all the troopers. We've seen them before, not too big of a deal. However, we see them all united here in what appears to be Chrono Tower, where we start off our experience on Viros, but it looks like we come back to it, which is typical Metroid gameplay, backtracking, but in meaningful, interesting ways. But as you see here, they are being attacked by an onslaught of these green grievers. This is a third variant of the grievers. We've seen the ones in the jungle, we've seen the ice ones, and now there are these that seem to be imbued with an extra amount of potent green energy. Why is that? I have an idea, and I'll get to that in a moment here. But just kind of scrolling through, we see that they're trying to fend them off, but they are fighting in the desert. You can see, well, one, you can see sand on the ground, right? But also in the air, it looks like there's some sort of sandstorm going on, but you can see just beyond the bridge, there is Chrono Tower. So they are actually at Chrono Tower, or rather, they are very close to Chrono Tower, and they're trying to get to it. So there's something going on here. They're trying to get to Chrono Tower all together. And there's all these green grievers that are all of a sudden here now attacking them, which we'll be getting to. I just want to point it out. We'll be getting to it in a little bit. Anyway, we see this Cybot-looking drone thing shooting them in this other cutscene. So yeah, they're being attacked all the time here. It's a completely different environment, so this is not going to be the first or last time it looks like they'll be attacked. But In this clip here, we see this giant pentagon tile being thrown towards Samus, or just past Samus, and it has like a green energy, has the ridges. We actually see a whole bunch of the tiles all over the place. I do believe that this is right after you beat Zelios, and so that's what this cutscene may be from. However, given what happens immediately afterwards, I'm definitely kind of wondering what's going on here, because Samus would have beaten the enemy already, right? Yet here it's being flung like way past Samus, still kind of having some green charged energy. So there's a little bit of a threat there as she's like staring off at it. And then immediately after, we see an opening that might be pentagon shaped, might be, might not be, hard to say with certainty. But we do see Sylux coming out, who also, yes, by the way, by design, has a green sort of highlight throughout his suit. So there is an interesting sort of connection there potentially. Anyway, immediately afterwards, though, we see a new scene of Sylux, and he's shooting out a green shockwave. So we've been talking a lot about this green stuff, right? It even has like almost like an electrical green like signal to it, very much like that. Like you see the little lines, it's the same kind of green electricity looking thing. So I definitely think there's a strong possibility there is a connection here. So yeah, I'd be concerned. Now, if you don't want to see any sort of upgrades for Samus beyond the Viola suit, you've been warned. Why are you watching this video if you're trying to avoid all kinds of spoilers here? Now, this is stuff being shared by Nintendo, so I feel like it's pretty fair to talk about. But yeah, just keep in mind, this is stuff that is even later game. I personally don't think this is that late game. I think it might be like first half, like the end of the first half maybe. But it is later game, so it is kind of maybe a pretty big deal. It might even be later than halfway through. But clearly there's a very important cutscene happening here where Sylux is blasting away at these troopers and Samus in her new suit, and they're being attacked. But anyways, on the suit, we've seen this before from the website. I have not really shown it off too much for those who are trying to avoid spoilers, but we've talked about it before. This is the back of it right here. Have no idea what it's related to at all. No idea. I'm very curious about it, but I have no idea. But it is a new suit, and it does go to show that Samus does face off against Sylux multiple times throughout the game. Sylux faces off against Sylux at the very beginning of the game, although it's just a cutscene, so I don't think there's actually any gameplay involved there. However, we have seen clips from trailers where Samus is facing off against Sylux in her Viola suit, so she does face off against Sylux then and then also now. So there's at least going to be a couple times where you fight Sylux, very similar to how Samus would fight Dark Samus multiple times throughout both Prime 2 and 3. So something similar may be going on here, but here Sylux is trying to take them out at Chrono Tower. So I think that's something important to keep in mind. They're all getting attacked here in a situation that's very reminiscent of when Dark Samus attacked the Hunters, including Samus, at the beginning of Metroid Prime 3. So it's similar there. But here we are, we see the last little clip, and they're trying to fend off the Green Grievers. So my take on this situation here that's being depicted is that this is maybe once Samus has acquired all the keys for the teleporter that supposedly, I guess, is at Chrono Tower maybe. So here they are at Chrono Tower all together. But there is one final threat that's holding them back, and that is Sylux shooting out this green shockwave of energy. And also we have all the green grievers that are protecting the Chrono Tower, right? So my take is this. I think Sylux is actually in control of these grievers. He's done something to them, and now they are infused with his green energy, so they're kind of like his minions. And if you think that's a stretch, never mind the context clues that they are defending the Chrono Tower where they're having a fight at. We do know that Sylux is in control of the Metroids from the beginning. So he does have the ability to control creatures and change them around and have them attack his enemies. So there's already precedent set by the game. I don't think it's really a stretch at all. I think it's actually very likely what is going on here. But there's another wrinkle to this equation here. And that's this little clip here that I'm going to play.
This must be the master teleporter.
You see her new suit. They're at the master teleporter.
Believe it. We're actually going home.
I'm gonna play it one more time. Actually, I don't even need to. You see this purple stuff here, right? They are in the same room when they fight Sylux. So, going back to the fight with Sylux, see? There it is. It's right there. This is the same room of the teleporter where they battle Sylux. So, when we first saw that clip, I thought that something was going to go awry, that not everything's going to work out perfectly beautifully. And yeah, sure enough, that's literally what is happening here. Sylux is not going to just let them get to this teleporter. Now, it's possible that when Sylux attacks, it's actually before this moment here. Like, they beat Sylux, and then they can actually, you know, get to the teleporter. But I find that so hard to believe that Nintendo would share, like, the very end of the game, and they all just get off scot-free, and nothing happens. Quite frankly, I think this is maybe, like, the first half of the game. Because first off, again, why would they show off an endgame scene in commercials for Metroid Prime 4? That doesn't make sense to me. Like, maybe somewhat late game, right? Like, they've done that, but not the end of the game, not the scene, not the cutscene pertaining to the last fight in the game, or even the second to last fight in the game. And also, usually there's some sort of giant, monstrous boss at the end of every Metroid Prime game, so to just see Sylux as the final threat, I don't believe that either. We also know that Sylux hates the Federation, and something else I think is important to talk about is that the Sylux amiibo has him on the helmet of a Federation trooper. He is crushing a Federation trooper. Now, maybe it's a Federation trooper from the past, not necessarily the ones that we're working with here, but I do think it needs to be understood that looking at the entire history of Metroid, whenever Samus has companions, they die. Like, maybe if they're still at base, they might survive, but if they are on the journey with Samus in some way, they've always died. Outside of some animals, they all die. So, I think there's a fantastic chance that the Federation troopers here, for the first half of the game, you do get to know, there are cutscenes with them, and then they die. And I actually think that this might be something key for that feeling of isolation in Metroid. So a lot of people are concerned about the Federation troopers because it may impact that sense of isolation. But if you didn't play Metroid Prime 3, in Metroid Prime 3, the first two areas of the game, there's a lot of characters you're interacting with, there's a lot of dialogue between them, and even later parts, there's still dialogue. And so you get to know these characters, and eventually you run into the different hunters later on to the game, and spoiler, there's a lot of death. And ultimately what happens, even though some people criticized Metroid Prime 3 at the time, I ultimately thought that letting you get to know these characters and then losing them was more isolating than just sending you to a planet where there's zero dialogue throughout the entire adventure. And so I'm led to believe that something crazy is going to happen here between Samus, the Federation troopers, and Sylux, and that leads to something that is very groundbreaking. Like, we've already talked about how we already have plenty of evidence that there's some level of depth to Metroid Prime 4. We have the ancient ruins that we access from Soul Valley. We have the Great Mines as well. We have the maps we see in Metroid Prime 4 that show a lot of scale and show a topography with depths as well. And so I do think there's going to be a depth to Metroid Prime 4. I talked about this in more detail and more from a video a couple days ago. I have it in the iCard there. But something else that's talked about is time travel, and here they're trying to get to this transporter, which has been made by the female Lemorne, Shay, who had an understanding of how space and time work. I wouldn't be totally surprised if, like, there's a whole other half to this game that is just going to completely blow our minds. Very much kind of like A Link to the Past, where you're playing so much of the game, or Ocarina of Time, and all of a sudden, you get into the whole Dark World, or the whole other period of time, and that just kind of completely fleshes out the game, and it's a whole other layer there. But I do think Sylux is going to be doing some hunting here, and I think Sylux's goal is to, well, murder them. Maybe not murder Samus, but if he kills the Federation troopers, I don't think he'll mind. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.